What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. Couple things before we get started. One, t-shirts are coming. If you're interested in a t-shirt, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever your social media platform. I might not be on some of the new cool stuff. I'm too exhausted to be cool. But on those three platforms, for sure, I will be having information on how to get a t-shirt. If you're like me, but only amplified, and you're not doing any social media at all, for one, I tip my hat to you. For two, email me if you're interested. The email's in the description. They're going to be truth shirts on black tees. I can do hoodies too. I have prices and all that stuff soon. I'm going to do a pre-order. Price will be cheaper if you pick it up at TFCon. More expensive later on. Or Baltimore. I'll be at Baltimore Comic Con as well. Things are really dry right now toy-wise, so I'm going to be doing more comic book stuff here, and everybody seems to enjoy that, and I enjoy doing it. It's a little labor-intensive, but don't worry about me. I'll be fine. But today we need to address the animated elephant in the room. Let's talk about Transformers and animation. And we're not going to go too much in detail because there's a lot of history, and maybe I could go through the history in a series of videos or something, but in a nutshell, we have G1. G1. Which is, in my opinion, it's the bar. It's the precedent that was set. And they've never really captured the lightning that was in that bottle again, for a number of different reasons. The one that got closest was probably Beast Wars, which I don't care for, but I respect. If you want to know more about my opinion on Beast Wars and why I'm not into it and why I think it's a big issue in the fandom, not in terms of people enjoying it. If you enjoy it, then I'm happy for you. Like I always say, if you like it, you win. But why I think a lot of the blame for Transformers issues through the years can be laid at the feet of Beast Wars. I can get into that very in depth. But and then you have the Beast Machines and all that sort of stuff. All that stuff, I mean, I know Beast Machines isn't as interesting, and I get it. But those were kind of the closest, right? And then we have the Cybertron Armada, Energon stuff, and the RID stuff, which is all very Japanese storytelling that we adapted to an American audience. And it's not necessarily that one is better than the other, but Americans tend to prefer American storytelling, and I would imagine the Japanese tend to prefer Japanese storytelling. Doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the opposite, etc. I enjoy plenty of Japanese properties. It just means that sensibility-wise, the writing is going to speak more to the people that grow up in the culture that the writing is speaking for. And then we have animated. Animated is another one that, looking back in hindsight, all things being 2020, might need to have some blame laid at its feet as well, in a different manner. But that's where we get a more kiddie approach to Transformers, in my opinion. And then we've seen a lot of that since, with the exception of Transformers Prime, which is probably the best animated series they've done since G1. Only because it had a level of maturity to it, and they took it seriously, which was obvious. And then, of course, we had Moosehead here recently, and now we're moving into Cyberverse, and in the middle somewhere we had the Machinima stuff, which played out a lot more like a toy commercial than an actual show with soul and heart to it. And now we have Cyberverse coming, which seems to be standing on the legs and shoulders of shows that seem to be successful now, to include the Netflix Voltron, which has been fairly well received. So much, in fact, that we're seeing this Star Wars Resistance show that looks to be aiming at a very childish demographic. Not to say that Voltron was, but I'm just saying, but done in that same style. I talked a bit about Resistance and my disappointment with it on Nerd Rage this past week, 156. If you're interested, look it up. I also talked about what movies would benefit from having a Tyrannosaurus Rex in them. But let's not be distracted by T-Rexes. I do think that this Cyberverse has some merit, and I'll tell you why. It seems to be playing into the Siege toy line a bit. And if they put heart and soul into this Cyberverse show, and it looks like we're getting a little more heart and soul in this Siege line, and they both correspond properly, it could yield better results for all of us as a fandom. However, I'll tell you one of the things that's going to hold Transformers animated television back from now probably until the end of time, which I hope is a fair bit away. And that is the digital animation. Take Prime, for example. The amount of money that they had to invest to design those characters limits the palette of what you can do, which is why we had Viacons, I would imagine, because all you have to do is create one digitally and you can just sort of replicate them throughout. Obviously, they all have to be shaded independently and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of design, it's a lot easier to accomplish. One of the charms of the G1 cartoon was that you had this plethora of characters. And there's something about that makes the world seem large. It makes the world more interesting, it's more enticing to the viewership. And most of us like the toys, and they go hand in hand, obviously, so it presents a lot more options in both regards. More options for entertainment on the television show, more options for toys to collect for your shelf. And with a lot of these newer shows with higher production costs per for a character, I'm not sure if we'll ever have that charm again. Maybe, but I'm not sure. That is something that, in my opinion, is always going to hold Transformers back. One of the charms of Transformers to me is the abundance of characters. And not for nothing, they did a pretty good job of designating certain personality traits to most of them. Definitely a passing grade, 70% or better. Where it made you care about characters. Like, I care about the relationship between Slingshot and Silverbolt. That just means that they took a little bit of time to develop them. Not much, obviously, but enough. Transformers is unique to me that way, in the same way that Star Wars is unique to me, where I like most of the characters. I'm not sure if I can think of another franchise with that many characters where I could probably name on one hand from both franchises the amount of characters that I just don't care for. Blur, Wheelie, Jar Jar Binks, and of course, are you an angel? But you know what I'm saying? So, an awful lot of characters, and most of them are pretty cool in one way or another. Which brings us to the second stage of this discussion. One thing that sets G1 aside, and this isn't a G1 is better than everything discussion, it's just that it is, and I'm kidding. You can like whatever you like, it's fine. It's just that it was very successful, probably more successful than any other animated venture from Transformers, so I always have to go back to reference it in order to make points. And the next point is this: Hasbro has kind of gotten into the idea and the formula of creating a series, doing 3 seasons, and getting out. And they do this to capture age demographics. You do it when kids are 5, kids fall in love with Transformers and buy the toys. Hopefully from 5 to 8, around 9, they start getting out of toys and cartoons and such, and then Hasbro comes in with a new show to pick up the next generation of 5-year-olds. And I could be wrong about the ages, but I'm just making a general point. But with this formula in mind, you're automatically putting blinders on the show and saying it's only going to be for 3 seasons. We're only going to be able to introduce and develop this many characters. We only can afford to design this many characters, and therefore the world's never seen as big as they once were. And that has to do with the evolving business of what Transformers has become. But when they started out, I think their goal was just to make the best show they could make to sell the product and hope that it was successful. So in doing so, they weren't limiting themselves to 3 seasons. They weren't limiting themselves to how many characters they could fit into 3 seasons and this overall story arc that would have to fit within that pocket. They were just doing what they wanted to do and doing it the best that they could under the confines in which they were working. As a result, it got so big and so popular, we had the animated movie, which we've never seen again since, in a theatrical sense. That's 2 senses. Sense and sense. And then they picked right up from there and went 3 and then went on to make 4. And then obviously the Japanese seasons continued. And we have to also say that season 2 was maybe the largest season 2 of any show ever. So they had a lot of time. And no one was considering rebooting it and turning it into something else because that wasn't part of the formula. But now there's a formula. And within the confines of that formula, there's only so much they can do. And I think that's always going to be something that puts a leash on what the Transformers brand can be from here on out. Unless they change the approach. So whereas the approach now is to create 3 seasons, capture 3 to 4 years of a child's life, get them involved, get the money for the product, hopefully have a lasting impression, and then move in to capture the next generation, it's always going to put a shelf life on what it can be, to include probably this Cyberverse. What I would like to see, obviously, is for them to really invest into something, have some toys to go with it, obviously, and sell toys as a result. I understand this stuff isn't Shakespeare, but create something, put heart and soul into it, and really take the time to drive it and just see how far they can take it before the viewership starts falling off and whatever, and then stop, obviously, and reboot. That's fine. But it doesn't subscribe to that formula, and if they were able to actually grow with their audience, like we've seen Harry Potter do and a couple of other franchises now, they can make something that starts off a certain kind of way, but by the time it ends, it has real merit, it has real soul, and it has real love and passion in it. Not to say there's not love and passion in some of these newer ones, I'm just saying. Which brings me to the third part of this discussion and the final act, ladies and gents. Our time together is but so long. The brand itself. I believe in my heart, and I know you can make an argument for the opposite, that Transformers, like most franchises, is a brand where the fiction drives the success. The fiction drives the success of the media. The fiction drives the success of the product. The fiction drives the success of the fan base. The fiction drives the success of the longevity. I'm a firm believer in that. So I'm not sure how much larger Transformers can ever get if it doesn't allow for the fiction to drive the product in a very committed manner. These commitments that they're doing now they're walking in knowing that there's an end, as opposed to like, let's just do something. And maybe we don't live in a market where that can exist anymore, and that's a separate conversation. But we're talking about what we'd like and what we'd want And to be fair, what I'd like and what I'd want. But that's why when I get into conversations with people about this stuff, I often refer to the Fall of Cybertron, War for Cybertron stuff. I often refer to the IDW stuff, especially Phase 2 with the Lost Light and all that, because it was interesting fiction that stayed true to the spirit and drove the franchise for an older audience, which is what I am and what a lot of you are. And I can tell that from my analytics. I think a lot of us, especially 80s babies, kind of keep having this hope that every new show will be the new one that we can fall in love with. And oftentimes we're disappointed. And oftentimes we feel disenfranchised. And oftentimes we feel discouraged. And I think it's an elephant in the room that we don't often address. But franchises and rebellions are both built on hope, so I'm not telling you to lose it all. I'm just raising the question of what can we do to have another long-lasting and impactful media outlet. I think a lot of us hoped that the machinima stuff would be that, and it wasn't. So here is an alternative that I've spoken about a lot. I don't like talking about problems without offering solutions. I wish that we could see straight to Blu-ray releases of animated short films done for an audience that's a bit older and a bit more mature. Not unlike what DC has done phenomenally. There's plenty of comic book stories, the video game stories, that we could tell in an hour and 45-minute format, straight to DVD, and I think it would be extremely successful. Obviously, most people, when they think of this, think of Last Stand of the Wreckers and all that kind of stuff, and I'm 100% with you. I would love to see that. But what about spin-off stuff? Hearts of Steel, G.I. Joe and Transformers. Like all this little stuff that could be done. Think about ongoing movie animated sagas, telling the story of the Lost Light, maybe even bringing some redemption to the Dreamwave era. I'm not sure why that avenue hasn't been explored, and maybe it has. And maybe the numbers reflect that the market can't support it. But I like putting ideas into the universe in the hopes that you can speak it into truth. One of the challenges, I'm on my way out of here now, but one of the challenges that I face with the Sit Down Saturdays, and let me be clear, most of the people are highly appreciative of them. They understand the amount of editing, the amount of planning that goes into having the discussions and have them unfold in a certain way. And they're very supportive and appreciative, and I am grateful for that. Thank you. There's always those chosen few, the vocal minority that get upset, or they make some argument against what I'm saying that I hadn't explored. And sometimes those arguments are thought-provoking, challenging, and introspective in a way that I hadn't considered. And that's what these videos are supposed to be doing, getting people talking. So even when the hate starts pouring out, I'm kind of okay with it because at least it gets people talking. I'm just ready to climb up on that cross. For the people. And then sometimes the arguments are simple and ridiculous and absurd. And the reason why I hadn't considered them is because I'm just not as ridiculous and absurd as the people making them. Sometimes I can't underestimate the stupid. And I say that as a person that doesn't consider themselves to be intelligent. I spent a large portion of my elementary school career in the resource room. You know what that is? That's where they sent kids to have one teacher per student. I'm not what the French would call a smart guy. Anyway, t-shirts and t-shirt information will be up soon. Let me know if you're interested. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care. Double salute.